Well, good afternoon. My name's Dave, and this will be my third video log concerning electrical vehicles and other renewable energy sources. Anyway, so a couple questions here, and I'm going to tell you a little adventure I had this weekend. So anyway, one of the questions all people always ask me is, what's the range of my car? You know, they find out that I have an electric vehicle, and that's the first thing they ask me is, what's your range? How far can you go? Well, I have a couple different answers for that. My car is a 2015 24 kilowatt battery in it, and when I've filled it to its max, the most I've ever gotten is 93 miles. So, a lot of people say, well, that ain't much, but you know, it's better than nothing. And I say, well, yeah, I can go to work and I can come back home. I can go to the grocery store. I can do all these things and still have a little bit left over. All the important things. Okay? So, as an example, when I leave here in the morning, I go to work. It's, let's just say 20 miles to work. It's actually a little bit less, but you know, 20 miles. So, and then when I come back home in the morning, in the evening, it's another 20 miles. So that's 40 miles. 40 miles out of 90 miles, 93 miles, that's still pretty good. So technically I could go to work and come back home 2 days in a row before I had to charge. Now, I don't like to do that. And what I usually do is I either charge at work and it's free, or I stop off at Whole Foods Market and it's free. So it doesn't cost me anything. And the only thing it really costs me is when I come home, if I decide to charge at the house, I just plug in immediately as soon as I park in the garage, and it starts charging, and you know, it's like very little that I pay for that. That's what most people on the YouTube videos that I've watched over the last 2.5 years have said, you know, just charge it at home and it doesn't cost hardly anything at all. I talked to one guy, he had a Tesla Model 3, and he said the most he's ever paid when he charged a full battery was $60 in like a month. And compared to what you'd normally spend on gasoline, that's pretty good. So, people also ask me, well, where do you charge? And I think I've already answered that actually. I charge at work, I charge at Whole Foods, normally, and a lot of times recently I just actually started putting it in my garage and charging through the 110 outlet. Now that's the slowpoke way to do it. That's turtle mode as far as charging goes. But that's what I do, and so if I plug in when I get home, if I get home in, let's say 3:30, 4 o'clock. No, let's say 5 o'clock. I plug in when I get into the garage and I just leave it there. And when I come out in the morning and I go to work at like 4 o'clock in the morning, it's charged, ready to go. So, piece of cake. Now, here's you always, in the YouTube videos, you always hear about people talking about when you run out of juice, you get into that, you get the little turtle. They call that turtle mode. And what that means is, you go kind of slow, you lose some of your engine power, and as I found out through experience this weekend, once you get into turtle mode, you can creep along to where you need to go, but once you stop and turn it off, there ain't no turning it back on. Not in my experience. You know, I said, well, I'll never be one of those people that do that, but yeah, I did it. So anyway, what was my journey? My journey, in a nutshell, was going from Spring Tomball area up to Brenham, west on 290, over to McDade, and then from McDade to Bastrop, Texas, and from Bastrop down to LaGrange, and LaGrange down to Columbus, Texas, and then from there to Katy Mills, and from Katy Mills back home. and it took me a total of 2 days. And there's a couple of reasons why it took me a couple of days. Uh, anyway, so here's what happened, okay? I won't make this too long, but kind of interesting, and it's a learning experience, all right? So when I got to Brenham, Texas, well, there's 3 different places you can charge, and they're all level 2 chargers, to the best of my knowledge. And so I pulled into the Best Western, and the people there were really friendly. I really enjoyed talking with them, and we kind of got into a little bit of discussion about electric vehicles and things like that. Anyway, they had a level 2 charger out in the back side of the Best Western Hotel. And so I go over there and I look at it and I said, oh yeah, this is what I always do. So the one in front said EV60, and I didn't really pay attention to the EV60 part. I just said, okay. So I plugged it in and it worked fine. And so I went back inside and waited around for a couple hours thinking, well, okay, it'll be charged now, or pretty close to it, so I can get on to McDade. Well, I go out there and it was not charging, and it stopped after I put about 10 miles onto my battery. And I was like frustrated. I didn't know what had happened. I went back in and I was talking to the people inside, and I said, well, do you guys got, like a timer set so you can only charge so long? Well, they didn't know, but the maintenance man, who doesn't know anything about electric vehicles other than electric, he came out to me and he heard my story, and he went outside and looked at it. He says, well, that charger you got says EV60 on the front, and on the back side it says EV40. Whoa, what's that? So I go out and look, and I said, oh, that must be 60 kilowatt hour and 40 kilowatt hour. And so when I plugged it into the back side where it says EV40, lo and behold, it started charging, and everything was working good. And so I went back and said, okay, we'll just see what happens. So about a half hour later, it was still charging. An hour later, it was still charging. And I said, well, man, this is going good. And so anyway, thank you very much to the people at Best Western in Brenham, Texas, because they helped me out a lot. And me and the maintenance guy there, we had a good long talk about, different things like what an idiot I was for not knowing how to, which side to hook up to my car. And we talked about his diesel truck, which, interesting little tale, but, it's a diesel. So anyway, so I got a full charge. I ended up waiting around for about another 3 hours, I think, maybe 4 hours. I can't remember exactly. And anyway, I had a charge and stuff, and it was plenty. I think I had 77 miles on it. It wasn't fully charged, but it had 77 miles on the gasometer. Well, I needed to drive 59 miles to McDade from Brenham so I could use a charger that's out in the middle of nowhere, level 2 charger. And, so anyway, when I got out, I took off and drove and had a nice time. It was a nice day, and I did not use my AC, believe me. 2 windows were down and the wind was blowing, and that was enough because I knew I was pushing it. Anyway, so then I got to McDade, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of close to Austin, kind of close to Bastrop, but from where I was sitting, it was like in the middle of nowhere. And so I called the guy up and says, oh yeah, it's just over there by the metal shed that has the solar panels on top. And so I found he gave me the address, and I found it, and I went over there, and lo and behold, the sign says solar powered, and I could see the panels on top, and the charger was a juice box charger. And so anyway, I plugged up, and it was charging and stuff, and I'm looking around, and there's nothing to do. I walked across the street and to see if the owners worked on the other side of the street. There was some kind of warehouse or something. It was real small, but anyway, they knew nothing about it. And so anyway, I charged for about an hour, and then I called the guy up at the Best Western in Bastrop, and And anyway, so he said, oh yeah, just go up here to 95 and down 95 to 71 and make it right, and there you are. And I said, okay. So I started driving, and I didn't have that much charge left, but you know, I was too impatient to wait around for 2, 3, 4 hours and all that stuff there in the middle of nowhere. So I started driving, and I got up to 95 and went down towards Bastrop. And when I got down to Bastrop, I was kind of starting to run out of juice. And I said, whoa, because the little old dashes were blinking and all that stuff. And so anyway, long story short, I made it to the parking lot and was able to park in the Best Western hotel. And I turned the engine off. And the turtle had popped up on my screen before I got there. Okay, I kind of jumped ahead of myself there. But the turtle, so I was in turtle mode. And I had always thought that I would never be one of them people who got in turtle mode. Well, I was in turtle mode. And I found out that when I got into the parking lot and parked and turned it off, that it wouldn't turn back on. Because I went inside and talked to a gentleman who worked inside there, and from my conversation with him, I thought they had plenty of places to charge. But come to find out, they only had one place to charge, and it was a 110 outlet, and it was a little maintenance shed that's inside the pool area. Luckily for me, I had a 50-foot extension plus my charging cable, so I was able to hook up and got to charging and stuff. And the way I had it calculated out, it was going to be, charged fully by the time I got up in the morning, ready to go. Well, before I went in, I was out there in the pool swimming around and taking advantage of this, not a sauna, but a jacuzzi. And it was really nice, believe me. And so I was all plugged up and charging, and these construction people from some kind of company, GCC or GOO or whatever, they were there drinking and partying and all that stuff. And so I said, well, I figure they'll behave themselves. Well, I come out in the morning, about 6, 7 o'clock, expecting my car to be charged up. Somebody, I can't tell you who, but I only know of a certain group of people that were there, unplugged me. And so I only had 33 miles on my battery. Well, I was a little perturbed, but I, still had till 11 o'clock, so I plugged in, and I stayed right till 11 o'clock charging, and I had about 60-some miles, 70 miles on my charge. I said, okay, well, I can make it down to, Columbus. Well, as I'm driving along, I get to LaGrange, and I'm looking at my charge, and I said, well, maybe I'll try to find some place to charge. And I stopped at a couple restaurants, and they didn't have anything that worked. And then I saw Best Western. I said, all right. So I went over to the Best Western and went inside and talked to them and told, I said, hey, I got a Nissan Leaf. It's an electric vehicle. And I see that you have a 110 outlet on the outside. May I use that? Excuse me. And they said, well, sure, no problem, So I went outside and plugged up to their 110 outlet. And I was there for at least 2 hours, maybe 3. And I charged and sat inside and watched YouTube videos and things like that, and drank some, Diet Coke and water and just pass the time. Anyway, when I left, I had barely enough juice in there to get to Columbus. Now, it was my understanding, and this was partly, I don't know whose fault this is, but I used PlugShare, and PlugShare said, yeah, Snappy's Market has Tesla chargers, and they have Chatamo chargers, and I said, okay, great, Chatamo. I can charge up in Chatamo, and I can make it all the way to Katy Mill, where I know they have EVgo Chatamo charging. I said, no problem. So I get into Columbus, and I drive down there and stuff, enjoying everything, and I'm doing like 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour. Everybody else is doing 70, 75. But, I stayed in the slow lane and, drove along. And I was getting down pretty low, and I got to Columbus, and I had about 12, 13 miles on my charge. So I pulled in there, and I pulled in the exit, and I see Snappy's Market, and I said, all right, Snappy's Market. Okay, so I walk into Snappy's Market, and I said, yeah, looking on the website, it says that your market, you here have Tesla charging, and you have a CHAdeMO charging. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any of that stuff. And I showed him. I said, you're supposed to use Snappy's Market. Well, he said, I don't know, no, blah, blah, blah. That's about how he talked to me. He mumbled, you know. Okay. So I sat there and thought, well, what am I going to do? I said, you got a 110 outlet on the outside? He says, no. I said, but he says that hotel over there's got charging. Oh, okay. So I thought, well, maybe they just had, the wrong market, and they just put it down there, right? I went over to the Baymont. Was it the Baymont? Anyway, I went to the next hotel over, and it was the Baymont, and they had Tesla chargers, but no CHAdeMO. I said, oh heck, what am I going to do here? I went to the next hotel over, which was I forget what it's called, but anyway, name escapes me. But they had nothing. So anyway, he said, we got no chargers. So then I went a couple other places walking in the 96-degree heat. And I ended up over at McDonald's, which is like right next door to the hotel. And they said, yeah, you can use our 110 outlet. So to make a long story short, they let me put my extension cord inside their door and plug into an outlet. It was inside McDonald's. So I really appreciate those folks there at McDonald's, because they really helped me out. Anyway, I was down pretty low. I don't know how low I was, but I know I was below 8 miles. But I had the turtle hadn't come on, so I was happy about that. Anyway, I got up to 13 miles. And in the meantime, I was going back to the other hotel. It was the Baymont, I believe it was. And I was talking to the lady inside there, and I said, it was the Baymont. Anyway, don't hold me to that. So anyway, I walk in there, and I said, well, how much is a room here? Because I walked all around that hotel, and I didn't see anything. But I saw a 110 outlet next to a parking spot not being used. And so I says to the lady inside, hey, if I get a room here tonight, I'll pay the $150 for the room for one night just so I can use that 110 outlet out there. Well, she had to call her boss up, and her boss said no. And I'm thinking, I couldn't really quite believe that, but her boss said no. But I was more than welcome to spend the $150, spend the night there. And so, anyway, then I went to the other hotel next door, and I got to talking to them, and they said, I was telling them about Snappy's Market, and they said, well, there's 2 Snappy's Markets here in Columbus, Texas. And I said, what? Why didn't that guy over there tell me that? He didn't tell me anything. He just grumbled and mumbled. And anyway, they told me it was only like 2 miles away, 3 miles away to the other Snappy's Market. So I called over there, and he says, oh, yeah, we got Tesla, we got CHAdeMO chargers. I said, I'll be right there. So I drove about 3 miles down the I-10 going east, and I find it's a little town called Allerton. Allerton or Allerton. Anyway, it's right there on the border with Columbus. It's like pretty much basically part of Columbus. And so I pull in there, and I found the chargers, and they were run by Electrify America. And they were all Tesla chargers, the CCS chargers, except the one which was a CHAdeMO. Well, nobody else was there, so I sat there and pulled my little Nissan Leaf up to it and plugged it in and got to charging and went inside and talked to the people inside and said, man, I'm glad you guys had it. I thought there was only one Snappy's. And they said, they said, well, I don't know why the other guy didn't tell you about us, but anyway, the other guy didn't have very good attitude. But the one, Snappy's Market, that's in Allerton, big thank you to those guys, because they had the chargers. Anyway, I used the, fast charging CHAdeMO, and I got up to 77 miles charge, and I was a happy camper then. I made it all the way into Katy Mills, and I was going to use this the slowpoke charger just to add a few miles in there, but Tesla was using that. So I used the CHAdeMO charger and hooked it up and charged it for 30 minutes. And during that 30 minutes, I went walking around inside the Katy Mills Mall and just enjoying the fresh air-conditioned air. Made a tour around the whole place, and 30 minutes was up. I looked at my phone and saw that my 30 minutes had passed, and I was up to like 90% charge or 80% charge. And so anyway, I got out there, unhooked, and I said, well, time for me to go home. And so from there up to home, it was maybe 40 miles at the most. But anyway, I got there and got to the house, pulled in the garage, and man, oh man, I was like glad to be home. But all told, my thanks to Best Western in Brenham and in Bastrop and in LaGrange. All of them were very, very helpful. And then thank you very much to Snappy's in Allerton, right on the eastern side of Columbus. And so that's how far you can go on a 2015 24 kilowatt battery. Okay, 2015 Nissan Leaf 24 kilowatt battery. Anyway, so, and I know that I could do a lot more, but I was getting kind of tired. So anyway, if you have been, thank you for watching. If you want to give me a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. Or you can give me a thumbs down, either way, and tell me what you didn't like. Other than this went 22 minutes long. I was about 5 minutes longer than I wanted to go. Anyway, okay, all right, thank you very much, and keep on trucking.